Hello and welcome to the Manchester is Red podcast from the Manchester Evening News. I'm your host Rich Fay. I'm joined this week by Tyrone Marshall. Just a quick note though before we get started, there is some construction work taking place right outside our podcast studio, so if you hear any industrial noises then we do apologise for that. Any industrial language as well, Tyrone, that is forbidden on today's podcast.
There was some industrial language when Alejandro Garnacho took that overhead kick.
Yeah, there was it? I mean, that's the place to start, isn't it? We'll go to what United's win against Everton in detail, but it is all caveated by what happened after 2.5 minutes. Garnacho's goal, can you imagine? For you, where does that rank? Is that the best overhead kick you've ever seen? I think from sort of a modern point of view, we put it with Rooney against City, Ronaldo against Juventus, Bale against Liverpool, Garnacho against Everton though. I mean, the angle, he's basically on the edge of the box.
Yeah, it was everything about it was beautiful, wasn't it? It was, I've written a piece this morning and I was kind of comparing it to Rooney's, and Rooney's was like, it was classic of Rooney, wasn't it? It was an angry overhead kick, like an aggressive overhead kick. He did shin it, like the celebration was aggressive. It was just pure, like, unfiltered Rooney, whereas that kind of felt like unfiltered Garnacho. It was like balletic, wasn't it? In the way he got up, it was a proper overhead kick. You mentioned Bale's there. That was like the occasion for Bale to Champions League final was amazing, but it was like kind of almost like a hooked over his head, wasn't it? Whereas Garnacho's was like technically beautiful. Like it was beautiful to look at.
I do think there's something. I'm not quite sure what the point is, but Ronaldo. Bale maybe not as much. Kind of though, but those Rooney, Ronaldo, Bale, they're all at the peak of their powers at that point. This is a teenager, sort of announcing himself with
coming out moment.
Because everyone who covers United knows how good Garnacho can be, but he's had moments, hasn't he, on the first team scene? And ironically, he gets him out of the match. He doesn't have the complete performance. I think Mainoo, as we'll get onto, was the better player on the day. But for a youngster to actually produce that. You could see Luke Shaw's reaction, you could see everyone's reaction. They were just shocked and stunned. We know this guy's special, but Jesus.
Yeah.
He is really special because there's been moments, haven't there, where we've looked at Garnacho and said, well, he doesn't really play that well from the start. He's probably been United's best attacker for the last month or so, actually, but he's never really had that moment yet, has he, on the first team scene? And he's had some good goals and some important goals, but that will send shockwaves across the world, that goal.
Yeah, I mean, that it'd be replayed everywhere. When the fact it's Man United as well that he's done it for it. It would have broken what's left of social media on Sunday. It was like him announcing himself. I mean, he has scored some great goals and some really important goals. We probably want, in a way, we forget how young he is. I mean, he's not even 19 and a half, I don't think, yet. He's still very...
You can tell someone's young when they call themselves 19 and a half, can't you?
Yeah. I've called him that, to be fair. I don't know if he's going around saying he's 19 and a half, maybe. But it's just to show like how young he is, really, that he's only turned 19 earlier.
He's 19 and a half, isn't he?
19 and a half. And he's 19 until he's 20. And it's, but we want more from him. We want him to influence games more, to influence games constantly, to score more goals. And, we've spoken at length at this podcast this season about the lack of goals from attacking areas, how now they all need to do more. I said last week that if United to win any of these away games this week, someone in their attack is going to have to stand up and win a game. And I mean, yesterday all three did it in a way, I guess, all three doubling their goals tally. But it was Garnacho that got the ball rolling. You can't underestimate the importance of scoring an early goal in that atmosphere yesterday as well, given everything that was going on with Everton. It didn't silence the place, but it kind of it settled United down massively. And it was just a phenomenal goal, and there's clearly more to come from him, as Ten Hag was saying yesterday with the Rooney-Ronaldo comparisons. I mean, that's his 7th goal in 52 games, I think, for United. And like I say, he's still 19 and a half, but he's got to score more goals. Ten Hag's right that even a wide player and a winger these days, in a 4-3-3, the wingers are kind of forwards anyway. You look at Salah, Saka, Sterling. These wide players have got to score.
Gone are the days where you just whip crosses in. Yeah. Now you're expected to
score. You've got to score. A winger a wide player for Man United in 4-3-3 has got to score 20 goals a season. I think 15 to 20 goals a season, and that's what he's got to get to. He's got to add in regular goals and tap-ins and easy goals with the spectacular. But we know we knew there was a hell of a player there, but that was just a reminder of what a special talent he is.
There was a nice moment after the game actually where we were in the mix zone. We spoke to Bruno Fernandes, but as the players making their way out, James Garner, who used to play for United, was there having a catch-up with some of the United staff, and when Garnacho came past, he just went, where the hell did that come from? he's like, I know Garnacho is good, but that's a very special goal. And yeah, you mentioned a good point there, that the goal did sort of stun Goodison Park, because, it was, I can't recall fan protests like that since the European Super League, and of course that was at a time where crowds and attendances were subdued anyway, and they were limited to how many they could be. But Goodison Park was a bear pit, and United could easily have crumbled, in that situation. They still rode their luck a little bit at times, particularly in the first half. I mean, the quirk was that they went in ahead at the break despite not having a chance, really, because the Garnacho goal and the nature of it. But I guess it's a compliment, isn't it, Ty, that even if you take away that goal, United did still overcome that test of character. Yeah, they did, and we were just saying on our way up to the studio that I don't know anyone that actually thought United would win that game on Sunday. Even the United fans I know, none of them actually thought United would win that game. Some of them were very aggressively betting on Everton to win the game. And from everything we've seen of United away from home this season under Ten Hag, the questions about their character, the fact that Everton had won 6 in 9 anyway without this added motivation of the 10-point deduction. I didn't hear anyone say that I think United will win this game, and I didn't expect them to win the game. I don't know about you. I'm guessing you didn't expect them to win the game. I thought a draw at best.
Yeah, but it's interesting to put in. Like we say, Goodison was always going to be furious. I mean, you were at the game yesterday. I was watching it at a children's birthday party, and there were some. I think they've learned some new language after that goal in the 3rd minute when watching it on the tablet. But it's probably interesting actually to put into context just what it was like, because obviously for people not there, we know that Sky kind of
tried to subdue
some of the language and stuff like that. So I mean, what was it?
It was as loud as I can sort of recall the stadium in recent memory of just they were booing any Premier League iconography. I'm talking about when before, like 10 minutes before the anthem, when they get that sort of the boarding out where it's got the Everton logo, the United logo, and the Premier League and stuff. That was booed beyond belief. You wouldn't be able to tell at the stadium, but they played the Premier League anthem. You could not hear any of it. It was just so high pitched. The pink sort of placards, the flyers, whatever you want to call them. I mean, on the walk to the stadium, I was offered a pink placard 15, 20 times. This was 3 hours before kickoff. There was so much fury and anger in the air, and like I said, just before half time as well, as some Everton fans made their way in. Obviously, the team are losing anyway, and they're a bit angry because they should be at least level in that game, the amount of chances they had. And there's some irate Everton fans screaming at the press box, telling us to make sure that we go in hard on the Premier League because they are a corrupt organisation. Obviously, there are the banners, but yeah, it was a type of atmosphere, as we said previously, that United could crumble in. And I guess the ultimate test is they've got 2 more of those this week, because Galatasaray away, as we'll get onto later, that is welcome to hell. That is famous in world football as being arguably the most intimidating place to go and play football. And then Newcastle on a Saturday night, who've just beaten Chelsea 4-1. This is a real test of character. But yeah, Goodison Park, I didn't quite know what to expect, but there was a lot of angry Evertonians, and they were even angrier by full time because they went out with a whimper, really, and that's a credit to United. And it's also a credit, moving on nicely, to Kobbie Mainoo, who United fans have been crying out to see for a long time. We always knew he was good. I don't think any of us expected him to be that good. I mean, this was... I know that I did a piece on it, and there's one comment saying he's the next Jude Bellingham, but this is what the best midfielders do. You look at like Pedri at Barcelona, you look at what Bellingham was doing at a similar age. They were dictating games, and Mainoo looks like he's cut from the same cloth.
He does, yeah. I mean, Jude Bellingham's only 20. We're already looking for the next Jude Bellingham, even though he's still 20.
Isn't Joe Bellingham the new Jude Bellingham?
Yeah, quite possibly. I mean, a phenomenal performance. And like we say, to show that character in that atmosphere and that environment is incredible, really, on your first Premier League start.
Yeah. He'd only ever started against Charlton before in the League Cup, and you wouldn't be able to tell.
No, exactly. And it was clear in pre-season that Ten Hag really liked him. And
you were there for that Real Madrid game, weren't you? Where
when he got
Ten Hag
injured.
Effectively played like his strongest team, didn't he? And Mainoo started.
Mainoo started and then got injured very early. And when he started in that game, all kind of building up to that game, you could sense, and what you were hearing, speaking to people on, the great thing on tours is that you get so much more access than you do over here, and speaking to people a bit more closely associated with it, just a bit more relaxed environment in a way on tour. And everyone was saying Ten Hag loves him, you know, Ten Hag loves Kobbie Mainoo. And we've said a lot on this podcast how Ten Hag is being pretty ruthless with the academy, which I think is partly driven by FFP and things like that, but also just by the sense that if you're now 19, 20, and you're not competing for a first team place at United, then there's no point in being at the club. So, you know, Zidane Iqbal's a classic example. Sell him. Sell, you know, Garner last year, Charlie Savage.
Well, that's the thing. The easy narrative on Sunday would have been Mainoo is anonymous and James Garner wins again for Everton, and then you're saying, has he made the right decision? But like you said,
reversed.
Yeah, the word from United's always been that, look, Ten Hag is ruthless. He wants more cohesion between the first team and the academy, but he does want it to be that, look, if you want to get into the first, sounds like I'm getting broken into here by this.
Under attack.
Yeah, but basically saying that, you know, if you aren't good enough, there is literally no point giving you that chance. And I suppose there's been criticism in the past that some United managers have almost given token debuts to young players just because they're from the academy. Yeah. And United have this illustrious history, and they've got this incredible record of having academy players in the first team, and that's not to be sniffed at. The majority of them are there on merit, they deserve it. But there has always been a feeling that just because someone's from the academy, they're getting a chance that someone else perhaps deserves. But certainly for Ten Hag, you look at the two youngsters who've had a chance, Garnacho and Mainoo, and they're the two standout players. Yeah,
absolutely. And it does show that, yes, he's being ruthless at that kind of age bracket, but he's also saying, if you are good enough, then you are going to get chances. We've kind of seen it with Dan Gore as well, who is highly rated and has had some first team exposure. And you know, we were talking last week saying, Kobbie Mainoo, back fit, how close does he get? There's so many injuries in midfield, and I don't think any of us actually expected him to start. I think we all thought he'd probably go with, you know, Amrabat and the only three fit senior midfielders really. I don't think any of us expected to see Kobbie Mainoo on that team sheet, but it shows the faith he has in him. Like I say, he was really good in pre-season. Being in that team against Real Madrid was a huge statement of intent, and I mean, you'd want him in the team the rest of the week, I think.
Yeah. I was going to ask this, that even when fully fit, Mainoo has taken his opportunity with both hands there, as he could have done against Everton, but obviously you're only as good as your last game. If he gets another chance this week, he needs to now back it up again. When Eriksen's back, when Casemiro is back, when Mount's back, do you still think Mainoo's going to get chances?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how that midfield shakes up, because, you know, on form this season, it sounds mad to say it, but you'd have McTominay in the team ahead of Casemiro.
Yeah. I think on form, your midfield would be McTominay, Mainoo, Fernandes.
It probably would, yeah. Mason Mount has done nothing. It would have been very interesting, actually, to see if Mount was fit, who would have started that game. You know, you're at the point where, I don't want to say things are becoming problematic for Mount. It's still clearly very early days.
And he's clearly Ten Hag's man as well.
He's clearly Ten Hag's man, but you wonder how he gets in the team at the moment, because Eriksen's been better than him, Mount's been better than him. The Amrabat signing is kind of like, I mean, it's hard to see a case for making that permanence at the moment. Where does he get in the team? If he signed as a holding midfielder, is he third choice now behind McTominay? You know, the picture
maybe
in that
fourth
midfield,
if you play Mainoo.
Maybe if you play Mainoo in that holding role fourth. And the picture in that midfield has changed so much since the summer, when I think Ten Hag looked at it and thought, Casemiro, Mount, Fernandes, I've got my midfield. And now,
we will have all done pieces in the summer saying that is the team.
That's his dream midfield. That's what he wants. Now you're looking at it, and even when they're fit, Casemiro and Mount maybe don't get in the team. And you know, it's great to have options there, but it's going to be interesting to see how that shakes up, because there's some players there United spent an awful lot of money on, who, I don't want to say aren't. You know, Mount hasn't delivered yet. Casemiro has. He was excellent last season, but he was.
Yeah, he's always a short-term fix, wasn't he?
He was a short-term fix, and it's looking maybe even shorter-term than United hoped for. So, you know, it would be, if Mainoo continues this trajectory, we've mentioned it previously, but wouldn't surprise me in the slightest if United are on the phone to Michael Emenalo in Saudi Arabia in the summer at least, saying, do you fancy Casemiro? Because if Mainoo does continue this trajectory, you can argue there's less need for Casemiro, unless he rediscovers that form in the second half of the season that he showed last year and really convinces you he's worth another year as basically the club's best paid player. You'd argue, you'd look at kind of a transition to someone like Mainoo anyway.
Yeah, and like you said, worst cases, it'll hopefully bring out the best of those who are on the periphery now and are out of favour. And if it doesn't, then that's your case to get rid of them. That's all for part one of the Manchester is Red podcast. We'll be back after the short break for part 2. Welcome back to the Manchester is Red podcast. We've spoken Garnacho, we've spoken Mainoo. Who else were your stand-up players against Everton? I mean, Bruno Fernandes said that basically back to front they were good. He praised Antony Marshall's movement, he praised the back four, the return of Luke Shaw, and also there was that moment for Marcus Rashford to finally end his goal drought at club level. Good captaincy that from Bruno Fernandes, wasn't it, to hand the ball to Rashford for the penalty and an emphatic finish that maybe you wouldn't always associate with a player so low on confidence.
Yeah, it was a great penalty for someone who has looked short on confidence. I mean, when I saw Rashford with the ball, I immediately thought, what's going on here? And when that happens, your first thought is always, he's going to miss it. Like, they're changed, they're playing around with the penalty taker.
I suppose Rashford will have taken a lot of penalties against Pickford at international level.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, maybe that comes into the thinking. I mean, it wouldn't have mattered who was in goal. No goalkeeper in the world is saving that penalty. And Martial's finish as well was superb. You know, incredible that the front three were all on the score sheet, really, given how... I mean, certainly out of form Rashford and Martial have been. Garnacho's been in pretty decent form, but hasn't scored that many goals. But yeah, you know, back to front, they were all pretty good. I think the defence was excellent. It was real back-to-the-wall stuff. And you know, Everton, for all the talk of how it was going to be a hostile environment and Everton had their team talk done for them, they had also won 6 of the last 9 games. Scored quite a lot of goals. I think in maybe 3 or 4 of those, they'd scored 3 goals. Suddenly, under Dyche, they'd looked a real, you know, a really dangerous team, scoring a lot of goals. Calvert-Lewin hitting form. So I don't think anyone really expected United to keep a clean sheet there. So to do so, Onana made some good saves. Like you say, Shaw, you've written a piece on him for this lunchtime. He is just Mr. Reliable now, isn't he? At left back, he's a fantastic player. The centre backs again, and I mean, I thought Maguire was excellent.
What do you think the strongest back four is then when everyone's fully fit? Because I was intrigued to see that Dalot got the nod ahead of Wan-Bissaka, because how good Wan-Bissaka's been. Obviously, maybe there's fitness over the international break or whatever, or you're trying to stagger your team for the week ahead. You can't really have someone starting 3 games maybe of that magnitude in a row. But when fully fit, you'd say the back four would be Shaw, Maguire, Martinez, and then a right back, wouldn't you? Would you agree with that yourself?
Yeah, I would. Yeah, like, you know, I think we said countless times, I don't think there's a lot in that right back battle. It's maybe the closest battle in the team, but neither kind of performs consistently enough to a high enough standard to make it their own. You know, the centre back situation is interesting because of Varane, isn't it? I think there's, as much as Ten Hag is playing it down, there's clearly something going on there. There's just absolutely no way that a full-time Champions League winner, a World Cup winner who's still only 30, is going to be happy being dropped for Harry Maguire and Victor Lindelof and Johnny Evans and however you want to phrase it about right-footers and left-footers or left-sided centre-backs. It's, you know, I don't think that is going to be washing with Raphael Varane somehow. There is clearly something else at play there, I think. And, you know, Varane had a spell alongside Martinez last year where he was really good. I don't think he's been consistently phenomenal in his United career, but you'd still probably have him in your best defence, I think. But I don't know, at the moment it's clearly not as stark a situation as Sancho, but you look at it and you wonder how it plays out, because I just can't imagine a scenario where he wants to stay. And it's not like I guess maybe he is next in line behind Maguire, but if Lindelof got injured and Johnny Evans was back fit, he's had Johnny Evans in the team there ahead of Varane.
And so now he'd even potentially play Shaw there.
Could play Shaw there, yeah, of course. Now he's back as a left-footed option. And I mean, to be fair, on form this season, you'd probably have Maguire ahead of Varane. Yeah. I mean, I think Maguire deserves so much credit, considering, you know, how...
Well, it seems certain that him and McTominay would both leave in the summer, and now they are 2 of the first names on the team sheet, and haven't let United down really this campaign. And United's best football has been with both of them at the heart of it and playing well. Yeah. So.
I mean, considering how traumatic things were from a footballing point of view for Maguire, how close he came to leaving, just the constant ridicule. You know, I've described him a few times as a pantomime villain and being booed on tour, booed by all the Scotland fans. Well, the opposite of booed, in fact, cheered by the Scotland fans, the ultimate kind of embarrassment. And then he plays really well in that game and then scores an own goal when he came on against Scotland. The Arsenal fans cheering when he came on in that game at the Emirates, and it's kind of it's weird behaviour, but it showed kind of what he'd become, this laughing stock of a figure. Yeah, it's 2 years since he was the best centre back in Europe at the European Championship, and it kind of feels, it's close to feeling like this is the centre back of 2021, and it's easy to forget now, but in the build up to that Europa League final against Villarreal, the talk was entirely dominated by whether Maguire would be fit for that final.
Yeah.
And it was seen by United fans as absolutely essential Maguire was fit for that final. To the point where he travelled. Did he even name on the bench?
Yeah, I think he was on the bench,
wasn't he?
Clearly wasn't
even
fit.
Even though he was like virtually still wearing a protective boot, like he wasn't fit, he wasn't going to play. But it was almost like using Harry Maguire as mind games, like, look, he's on the bench. Like, Villarreal are going to go, oh, Maguire's on the bench, what are we going to do?
Sort of like Ronaldo at the
90, kind of like that.
The 2002 World Cup final, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, but he was, that was the discussion. I think he got injured against Villa maybe towards the end of that season. And then there was 4 or 5 league games he missed, and United conceded lots of goals.
Yeah, just looked shaky.
Against Liverpool, lost at home to Leicester. So I can't remember the others, but there was some other. They conceded in all of those games, I think. They did concede in all of them. And the defence looked just shaky, and you thought they need Maguire back. They need Maguire fit here, which seems mad to think now, given how quickly post-Euros things went off the rails for him. But yeah, I just think he deserves so much credit for the way he's come back from that, because it must have been difficult for him going onto a pitch knowing that he's getting ridiculed when you're in that sort of form. When you're trying to.
It's also the fact that if anyone else makes a mistake, it's fine. But if Maguire makes a mistake, it is just torn apart. It is looked at so closely, and it's just the scrutiny he's under compared to any other United player is incomprehensible, really. And like you said, it is staggering that he's come through all this and is now playing as good as he ever has done, really, for United. Yeah. It's hats off to him. I think incredible.
No, I think enormous. Deserves enormous credit for it, and to be trying to rediscover that form and that confidence and that belief in yourself when you have to do your job in front of 50, 60, 70,000 people every week.
And never doubting himself either. Yeah. Even when he's at his low points, he still had that belief that, I've still got a future at the club. Yeah. I still have, I know I can be that player that United invested so heavily in the first place. So yeah, it's absolutely incredible. In terms of the other team news we saw on Sunday then, it's hard to forget as well by the end of it that Højlund and Antony were both missing. And that was a concern. It was not only where United's goals got come from, but yes, Højlund has not scored a domestic goal yet, but he's the leading scorer in the Champions League. It looked like a big loss. You'd still expect Højlund to go back into the team when he's fit enough, because he clearly is Ten Hag's man. He loves him, but the right wing again as well now with Antony missing that game, and then United's front 3 players, all of who could play on the right wing as well. Maybe not Marshall as much, but Rashford and Garnacho certainly could, performing well. It just adds to that conundrum once again, doesn't it? I know it feels like we go over ourselves a lot on this podcast, but Antony, it was a bad week for him to miss and United to play so well, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. And it kind of felt that he was a sub anyway now. I mean, he was dropped.
Luton.
Was it just Luton he was dropped for? No, he was dropped for the Copenhagen game.
Yeah, he didn't get off the bench for Copenhagen. But against Luton, he was good off the bench. He had created that chance for Rashford, which he scored.
Yeah. He'd just been so bad in the run-up to that Copenhagen game that it felt it was no longer plausible to actually pick him. And yeah, I think, looking ahead to Wednesday, you'd have, whatever Antony's situation is, you'd have Rashford and Garnacho on the wings. It's difficult to see a route in for Antony at the moment. He has just been so poor. I mean, this season he's been even worse than last season, and there is the very occasional moment from him. Like you say, he was decent off the bench against Luton, but he doesn't look a natural fit to this team for me. And I don't know why he was signed when Ten Hag is now talking about being the best transition team in the world and playing on the break. He's not a winger to play on the break. He hasn't got the pace or the directness, I don't think, to do that. It doesn't come naturally to him. So I think for the way United are playing at the moment, maybe Ten Hag wants to develop them, and I think he clearly tried to do that at the start of the season, and it didn't work, and had to go back to basics a little bit. But for the way this team's set up at the moment, I don't think Antony would really have a role.
Yeah, he sort of contradicts everything else they're trying to do, doesn't he? And he slows it down. He's, like I said, it's not a criticism of his style of play, because I think there is a way where almost if a team was like built around him, you could make him be very good, but he'd have to sort of be the star man. And now he's just part of the supporting cast for the other headline names. And yeah, you can't really have any passengers, can you, at United? And it just seems like you said, just never fit. And I can't. I mean, maybe he'll do a Maguire and prove us all wrong, but I just cannot see it ever really working. No. And again, like you said earlier, the expectations of a winger for United are to score 20 goals a season. Yeah,
and it's. I look at it. I did a piece of this looking at all the goals he has scored, and all of them are either, but basically getting the ball in the final third is either making a run into the area to get onto a pass, like the Arsenal goal on his debut, the Everton goal, or he's getting the ball in the inside right channel, kind of facing goal, 25 yards out, taking a touch inside, like at City, getting the shot away. Where is it? Betis, I think he scored a goal like that. And that's basically all of his goals are kind of like that. And he's not someone that you'd see, when you look at yesterday, for example, or you picture United on the break, and it's Rashford or Garnacho getting the ball. They can get it on halfway, could carry it 30 yards.
They could go left or right.
Could go left or right, carry it 30 yards quite easily. You don't see that with Antony if you're getting the ball on the halfway. We've said previously his dribbling is all left-footed, but he just kind of drifts to the touchline, has to come back, play it inside. He's a winger. You want to get him on the ball in the final third. If you get him the ball on that right-hand side where he's facing goal, he can cut in, have a shot, put a dangerous cross in, link up with someone. But to do that, you need to be a dominant team where you're playing in the opposition's half.
Like a City or something.
Like a City or something like that. And United aren't doing that. And I think when Antony's getting the ball on the halfway line, I don't think he's got the weapons to hurt teams in the way that Rashford and Garnacho has. And that's not his fault. I mean, Ten Hag would have known that when he signed him. And he's not been able to build a United team that can get the best out of Antony, I don't think. And if he does at some point, and they do become that kind of dominant team, playing in the opposition half, getting the ball to Antony 25 yards from goal and closer, I think we'll see more from him. But at the moment, that's just not happening.
I was also going to ask you, this might be, I might get some pelters for this. In terms of United's performance against Everton, I think the ends justify the means. By the end, it was a comfortable win. But there were moments in that game still where United take the lead through a moment of incredible individual technique. Similarly, they did that at Burnley. Bruno Fernandes scores a wonder goal. Sheffield United away is a Dalot wonder goal. Fulham away, it's a moment of magic kind of from Fernandes, but bad goal given from Leno. United is still predominantly a moments team, aren't they? And against Everton, first half they didn't create a chance, but were winning 1-0. They rode their luck a lot. There's some good saves, some good defending, like you said, but Everton missed some sitters as well. The Doucouré shot, the Calvert-Lewin header. Do you still think that there is this underlying issue about how United play? Because I do think that if you replayed that game on Sunday, maybe 10 times, United could easily have dropped points, sort of 5 or 6 of those. Yeah,
quite possibly. I mean, it wasn't a dominant performance. I would say I don't think...
I think the second half was United were in control, but the first half, I think they rode their luck quite a bit. I did think it sort of papered over the cracks of what was another mismatch of a team and no sort of identity.
Yeah, like I say, it got better. Even at 2-0, I think there was a spell where you thought Everton looked like they're going to score here. But United defended well. I mean, given the circumstances, I think every team would have found it pretty difficult there on Sunday, given the obvious intensity Everton were going to play at and everything surrounding it. I don't think even Man City would have gone there and played Everton off the park just because of the circumstances. I think you have to say it's a huge win. There was elements of the performance that can be better. I think we've been saying that all season, but I don't know. I mean, I thought Ten Hag was very bullish on Friday in his press conference when we had through the international break. They're the form team in the Premier League. They weren't the form team in the Premier League if you're basing that on performances, but Ten Hag seemed convinced that they were on the right track. And you look at the league table now, I mean, they're 2 points behind Tottenham, they're 4 points off the top 4. I think things are looking a lot better. You'd still want to see a better performance soon. I think it was a good performance in the end. I think it, like I say, shaky at times, but I think that's probably always going to be the case. But there's still more to come. If they can produce a better performance than that this week, then I think we will be confidently saying they've probably turned the corner.
Yeah. I'm being devil's advocate, I'll put it that way. But yeah, like you said, you need those wins to even build the momentum to then be able to dominate games anyway. I think we've said in the past that this ideology that a team will dominate every single game is just it's not real. I mean, anyone watches City, watch Barcelona, watch Real Madrid, they don't dominate every single game for 90 minutes. It's just not a thing. So maybe
I think they'll take more from that win than any other league win this season. The wins against...
You wrote last week as well that you were looking ahead, but that is arguably United's best ever away win into Ten Hag.
I think so, yeah. I said if they won any of these 3 away games, it would be their best away win, given the circumstances. I mean, the competition is Fulham away last season because they finished 12th, or maybe Forest in the League Cup because it was 3-0 and convincing, maybe Real Sociedad. But they hadn't had a standout away win, and given the circumstances of all 3 of these away games and the quality of the opposition in Newcastle, the atmosphere and the requirement to get a win at Galatasaray and the fact that it's so difficult to win there, and then a very in-form Everton team who are in a false position in the league with all of the advantages they had from what had happened. If they'd won any of them, it would have been his best away win, and I think it's given the scoreline in the end and the way they achieved it, like we say, not a vintage performance, but ticked a lot of boxes. And in the end, you kind of look at it and think, we stood up defensively, the attack contributed, the midfield looked better than it had done because of Mainoo, and the goalkeeper was good. In the end, you can look at every area and think, goalkeeper, defence, midfield, attack, it all took a step forward yesterday. So, I think it was their best away win under Ten Hag, and it's the one game, that's the game this season that I think they'll take most confidence from, because the other wins were nervy wins, fortunate wins where they really didn't play well for large parts of the game. Yesterday you could say things worked, whereas other games things just didn't work and they just got a little bit fortunate at times, or a centre half came up and scored the winner. I think that's the win this season that they'll take most belief and confidence moving forward from.
Best win of the season so far. Anyway, we'll look ahead to Galatasaray after this short break from the Manchester's Red podcast. Hello and welcome back to the final part of the Manchester is Red podcast. We've spoken about Everton. Let's look at the wider picture from the weekend then, Ty. United did win 3-0. Goal difference back to 0, a clean sheet. But Chelsea lost, Tottenham lost, City and Liverpool drew. Arsenal the only sort of close rival that did pick up points. I mean, fans would say, well, Villa won again. I mean, you've got to keep an eye out on them. But I do think that every single season we see a team like Villa who make this... They flirt with the Champions League spots and slowly drift away. I mean, happy to be proven wrong, but I think that's exactly what will happen again. So for United all around, it is a pretty good weekend. I mean, obviously if Arsenal had drawn as well, it would have been ideal, but United would be feeling quite confident, and I think they'll be feeling confident of a top 4 finish again.
I mean, they're right in the picture of a top 4 finish, aren't they? It's, we had the conversation earlier in the season when they were playing badly, when they were losing games, and we were talking about top 4 odds, and at one point they were the 8th favourites, I think, for top 4. You had the top 3 and Tottenham above them, but you had Chelsea was similar to them, but Villa were more. Villa still might be, to be fair, the way they're playing, but Brighton were above them in the betting odds. Newcastle were, maybe Newcastle still are, but
it makes headlines like this, doesn't it? If you're trying to sell your betting odds, put United 8th is always
I guess it makes
hit
headlines.
Worth taking.
Yeah.
And we've said in the past that when United achieve, it gets amplified to preposterous sort of levels where people think they're a lot better than they are. And then when United are having a bad season, it gets, again, taken out of context to be end of days, disaster, sack them all, get rid of the players, burn down Old Trafford, just start from scratch again, make a new club. They've got more points at this stage of the season than they had at the same stage of last season, United.
I didn't know that.
So for a crisis club, they're not doing too bad, are they?
They're not, no. I mean, they started last season in crisis as well, to be fair. But no, they're not, and they are right back in that picture for top 4. I think, as we said, they need to play better to get in the top 4. You would also look at their fixtures. What they played? Tottenham and Arsenal away, Brighton at home, I guess, of the teams you'd say. If we're talking about an 8-horse race for top 4.
And they lost all of them.
They lost all of them. There's clearly some tough games and City, of course, and they lost that as well. There's some tough games to come, such as Newcastle. If they're going to finish in those positions, if they're going to...
Well, you've got Newcastle, Chelsea and Liverpool in the next 3 or 4 weeks.
3 of the next 4
and Villa,
in the
of
league.
course.
And Villa,
Christmas.
yeah. So if you're going to finish above, you need to finish above 4 of those 8 clubs. I mean, you're going to have to beat some of them, and so far it's played 4, lost 4. So they're going to need to put together a performance to beat a Villa, to beat a Liverpool, to beat a Newcastle, to beat a Chelsea. We've not seen that this year. They've lost all of those games pretty comfortably, I guess. I could argue Arsenal was very tight at the end, but I think they've lost all of them on merit. So they need to play better. They need to produce a big game performance. But if you look at the table, and only 4 points off top 4 after 13 games now. Given the situation maybe 6 weeks ago, I think that's acceptable.
And the injury situation.
The injuries as well.
Has always been a caveat where it's a factor. It's not, for me, I don't think you can always say it is the main factor, because fundamentally, even an injury-stricken United side should be doing better in matches than they have been doing, and it's sometimes been a convenient excuse. But we did see at Everton that having someone like Luke Shaw back makes a huge difference. But that is still an injury-stricken United team at Everton, so you can't then say, well, we've got players back now, it's all solved. I mean, like I said, United are capable of that performance even when they've got players sidelined. But when they've got a close to fully fit squad, they could be a hell of a lot better, couldn't they?
They could.
Or could they be?
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting. Like I said, that's the best away win of the Ten Hag era, the best performance of the season for me. Not a single outfield player that Ten Hag has signed started that game. And how many, is a question for you, how many of Ten Hag's signings would get back in the team? If everyone was fit again next week, how many of Ten Hag's signings would you put back in the team?
2, probably.
Martinez and Højlund.
Yeah.
Yeah, same here. Which is damning in a way.
For £400 million spent.
£400 million. And obviously the goalkeeper is playing really well at the moment.
Yeah, fair play to him.
Fair play to him. Casemiro was great last year, maybe that formal return. But beyond that, you'd say, like I said, it would be Martinez and Højlund are the only two.
Spell it out then. When fully fit, and it's the caveat on when fully fit but using current form, what would your strongest United 11 be? Because again, you made a good point there that while we keep on saying that the injury situation has been a problem, there's been so many times this season where we've said, look, when Antony's back fit, he can be the solution, or when Casemiro's back fit, he can be the solution. He comes back against Newcastle, he's bad for 45 minutes, goes off injured. When Varane's fully fit, he can be the solution. But the fact is that you keep on identifying these injured players as the saviours, and then until they kick a ball, and they obviously aren't the saviour. So I do feel that a lot of United's, Shaw I think is maybe an exception to it, but a lot, and Martinez, even before the injury, he wasn't that good in the first few games of the season. But you keep on saying they are saviours because they're not playing at the moment. So right now, what would your strongest sort of United 11 be back to front?
Probably Anana. I'm not really fussed on the right back. Maybe Dallo, I guess.
Yeah, flip a coin.
Yeah. Maguire, Martinez, Shaw, McTominay. I suppose Mainoo. I suppose you have to go Mainoo. Fernandes, Rashford, Garnacho, Højlund. I think you'd probably have to say. I mean, we're judging players and saying only 2 of his signings would get in based on this season's form. We've not seen enough from Mount. We've not seen enough from Amrabat. We've not seen enough from Casemiro this year. On last season's form, clearly he would be in that team.
Eriksen's looked okay, hasn't
Eriksen's done all right this year. I mean, if you were taking Mainoo out, you'd put Eriksen in at the moment.
So that'd be 3.
So that'd be 3.
Keep us a 4, yeah.
But Malacia has never got close to Shaw. Antony, like we say, just I don't really see the point of it. I guess you excuse Reguilon as a loan sign-in. Maybe Johnny Evans you can excuse. I don't think he was signed to play in the team, was he? But he spent a lot of money, and at the moment, a lot of these players you're looking at thinking they're on form, they're not getting in the team. Maybe he does throw Casemiro back in January because he's Casemiro and what he did last season. But it's hard to find a path for Mason Mount to get in the team at the moment, for example.
I think that's the worry for me. I think if you put it out on like a spreadsheet, the most underwhelming signings so far, take Højlund out of it because it's unfair on him really, but are the most expensive ones.
Yeah.
And then the ones who are lower to the bottom are probably Martinez, Onana, in terms of transfer fees actually paid.
Yeah. And like I said, I don't want to keep picking on Mason Mount when he's injured and it is still very early days, but for £60 million midfielder, he's not made United's midfield look better this year, he's made it look worse. And there are, I said before, there's caveats that he's playing a role he never played at Chelsea and he's trying to relearn it, but just the way it's going, like I said, there's no path back into that team for him when he is fit. And picking the best team at the moment, like you've asked then, that's my best team. I mean, maybe yours would be different, I don't know, but it's...
Yeah, I think it's just the midfield, depending on who you're playing against, isn't it? Which is the other thing I asked you it, but I hate about those questions. It's because, well, what's the context of the match they're playing?
Yeah.
Because if you're saying you're playing, for example, like Bournemouth at home, then yeah, you can maybe play someone like Mainoo. But I know he's played great at Everton, but if United are going to play City away, I'm not putting Mainoo in midfield.
Big ask, isn't it?
I think it's just unfair on him.
And we're also picking it on form from one game. Games in a way. And we've got Maguire and McTominay in there, who Ten Hag wanted to sell both of them in the summer. In a way, it kind of shows how much this team has regressed.
It also shows
in a way, that they're in.
That's what I meant in terms of in part two, is that I still don't know the tactics of this United team, because if you said how does a Ten Hag team play, it's not how that team played at Everton, but they still won 3-0. And the other caveat, which I've already forgotten as I was speaking about it was just maybe sort of that in terms of United's identity, isn't it? It's like, what is it they're still trying to do? Because there comes a point where Maguire and McTominay have been excellent, but ultimately, are they still players who can play the way Ten Hag wants his team to play long term? Yeah,
well, I guess the question is, what team does Ten Hag want to pick? And I don't think, I mean, maybe Maguire, but I don't think he would want to pick a team with Maguire and McTominay in it. If everyone was fit and things were working.
Yeah, well, I guess that's
he would want them in the team.
That's the point I forgot I was making, which is helpful, was about United's plan. And it's still the evidence that even at their best at the weekend, that is evidence that Ten Hag's long-term plan is just not working, because it was none of his outfield signings and it was playing a way that he didn't want his team to play, using players he wanted to get rid of.
Yeah.
So it's what is the actual plan here?
Yeah, well, it's, I mean, I guess they have regressed, but it is a sign of regression. That it is, it's back to Solskjaer era stuff, isn't it? Maguire and Lindelof at the back, Shaw and Dalot or Shaw and Wan-Bissaka as fullbacks, and full credit to Maguire and especially Luke Shaw, who, as we were talking about earlier, is arguably one of the best 2 or 3 left backs in the league at the moment, and is Mr. Consistent for United. But then McTominay in midfield.
In Marshall and Rashford.
Even Marshall and Rashford, yeah. And, Marshall was in there because of a Højlund injury, but
that was a Solskjaer team, yeah, basically. 2 players away from Solskjaer team playing Solskjaer football.
Yeah. So it does show that, I don't say maybe, you do give Ten Hag credit for accepting that, for accepting things aren't working, accepting injuries have been a problem, and finding a way to win a game. Because we're saying that's a Solskjaer team, but a Solskjaer team lost 4-0 at Everton. And they did win there. I think 3-1 the year after, maybe, after that game in Istanbul. But, the Solskjaer team, that's a Solskjaer team playing better than, or producing better maybe than they often did under Solskjaer. But it does show that it's almost back to basics, isn't it? And maybe it's good that he's gone back to basics. They've got 5 wins in 6.
I think that's the point, isn't it? That maybe United did try to run before they could walk.
Possibly, yeah.
To be able to implement your style of play, you need that confidence first and that momentum. And to build that momentum, you need to revert back to basics, to get gritty wins, just get the confidence flowing, get your clean sheets, go up the form table. And then you can start to ask players to do things a little bit differently. So the real test will be later this week. And that brings us on to Galatasaray. Obviously, team news will caveat any sort of predictions for it. And of course, we'll bring you all the coverage from Ten Hag's press conference, which is on probably early Tuesday morning, or late Tuesday morning.
I think it's 11:30.
Yeah, I think open training's about 9:15 or something. So we'll bring you all the coverage from Ten Hag's press conference. He will be joined by a player as well, due to UEFA rules, and hopefully get some team news there, the likes of Antony and Højlund, updates on them. Would you change anything then for midweek from what you saw at the weekend? I mean, do you stick with Mainoo?
Yeah, I think you
for United to
do.
Arguably the biggest game of their season. Their season could hinge on what happens.
I guess the only question would be his match fitness. Obviously, he got that injury in July against Real Madrid. Yeah, it would have been July. That was his first game back. Don't think he played before then, had he? Don't think he'd come on anywhere. Would have presumably played that behind closed doors game in the international break. But is he fit enough to go again in another energetic, difficult game? I guess that's the one question mark, but if he is, you'd probably play him. Højlund, I guess, is maybe the one that you bring him in for Martial, but Martial's just scored. If there's ever a time to keep Martial on the team, it's probably now. But Ten Hag did say on Friday that Højlund had trained and they were going to judge on Saturday whether he's fit for Everton, so that'd make you think he'll be fit for Wednesday.
Yeah.
So I think that's the decision.
That was the other caveat that we mentioned earlier, that there's 3 massive games this week. So I think sometimes you need to be like, well, Højlund could play against Everton if we need him to, but let's not risk him because we've got 2 more massive games. So even if we lost against Everton, we've still got 2 more we want to win. So I think sometimes you've got to just give a player a rest. And I guess that's maybe even encouraging if that is the case, because we've said in the past that United have often been guilty of throwing players back in when they're undercooked and it can make things worse. We saw Casemiro against Newcastle comes back in from that suspension. Was it a suspension he'd had in that game?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
And he came back in, or was it an injury? I can't quite recall. But he comes back into the team after 45 minutes. He's injured, and that's him out until after Christmas. I mean, you need to ease players back into football sometimes, and United haven't always done that. So that was encouraging to see. But yeah, I think I agree with you. Højlund or Marshall is maybe the only change we'd say. Maybe right back as well.
Right back's the one. I guess he might look for a bit more defensive quality. Maybe I think. I thought United with a better team at home against Galatasaray, certainly for 70 minutes, but they look quite dangerous going forward at times. They've got quite a decent attack, so maybe you want one Bissaka in. I mean, I guess it depends. I'm not sure which game you prioritise, but. And we were just talking downstairs, and I said if they win another away game this week, it's going to actually be, if they win 2 of those 3, I think that would have been a hugely successful week. But I guess you look at it, it depends.
Which one?
I was going to say, I said if they draw 1 and win 1, it's a hugely successful week. But if they draw tomorrow, it doesn't matter if they draw or lose tomorrow, they've got to win, haven't they, to stay in the Champions League. So, if they win tomorrow and lose at Newcastle, yeah, I think that's still a pretty good week. If they win tomorrow, then it's almost a free hit at Newcastle.
Yeah, although the questions will then be asked at Newcastle of why United's still so bad against the good teams.
The good teams, I guess.
And I think it will also, I think as well, to come full circle, the Everton win in isolation was good. But if the problems continue and they've got no identity against Newcastle and they get brushed aside, then the Everton away win doesn't look like the best away win under Ten Hag anymore, because Everton.
You want to build on that with a performance, I guess, in one of these 2 games, don't you? And
that's the challenge.
Yeah. For all that we're saying, Galatasaray away is difficult. I mean, Copenhagen were 2-0 up there with 4 minutes to go, and all right, they got pinned back. I think Bayern only won it fairly late on there. So yeah, it's a difficult place to go, but teams can win there. But if they don't win, if they win the 2 league games away from home this week, it's a great week. But if they've not won in Galatasaray and they're out of the Champions League with a round to go, then there's still going to be a pretty huge caveat to the week, isn't there? That it's going to feel
like a failure rather than success.
I feel a failure because it is a failure, not getting out of that group.
So whatever happens, United are doomed. Basically, that is the
maybe they'll win all 3 away from home.
Yeah, that's the one. That's the one way to salvage this week, perhaps. But yeah, we will be back later in the week to analyse whatever did happen in Istanbul and to look ahead to that trip to Newcastle this weekend. So thank you very much, Ty, for joining us today.
Thank you, Rich.
And thank you very much for joining us wherever you are at home. Again, apologies for the slight construction noises you may have heard earlier in the podcast. Hopefully you will be back to join us, like we said, later in the week when we look ahead to that trip to Newcastle. Thank you very much for joining us. Make sure to check out us on all the socials as well. The links are in the description below. Take care, and we'll see you again next time.